WFYI podcasts are brought to you by Visit Bloomington, Indiana, where Hoagie Carmichael, Booker T. Jones, and John Mellencamp impacted the city and helped it become a music destination. Bloomington is home to a variety of musical artists, live music venues, and hundreds of annual music events. More information at musicbloomington.com.
WFYI podcasts brought to you by Foster Success, supporting older foster youth through the Insuring Foster Youth license plate. More information available at fostersuccess.org.
We're going to take a trip right now. Like we always do about this time.
This is a journey into sound. Break it down.
I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. Up first, on this week's show, I'll speak with the musician Taylor Hall. We'll discuss her latest release, a 7-song EP titled Cheaper Than Therapy.
Music has always been my therapy and my journal.
And on the second half of the broadcast, I'll talk with Jenny Boyts, the CEO of 45. 45 is a locally owned Indianapolis production company specializing in live music events, including Rock the Ruins at Holiday Park. 45 also owns and operates local music venues like the Vogue and Turntable.
My goal is to make sure that 45 plays a little bit of part of making sure that the quality of life here in this city meets the worth of the folks that live here.
Taylor Hall will join me in a moment. But first, let's hear a song from her new EP, Cheaper Than Therapy. This is My Way.
No time to waste, I gotta chase my destiny. Stuck in my way, no time to waste, I got no time to waste, I got no time to waste, my way, my way, my way, my way, my way, my way, yeah. My way, my way, my way, my way, my way, my way, yeah. My way, my way, my way, my way, my way, yeah. My way, my way, my way, my way, my way, yeah. Gotta go deep, gotta love myself. If I love no one else, gotta go.
That was Taylor Hall with My Way. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and that's why the Indianapolis native, musician, and activist Taylor Hall chose the month of May to release her latest collection of songs titled Cheaper Than Therapy. During my recent talk with Taylor, she told me that she hopes the project will help to destigmatize mental health and provide her fans with a message of hope. Let's join my conversation with Taylor Hall. Thank you for coming back.
Of course, that's crazy. I came when I was like 19, 20.
Yeah.
When I first started, like my first song that I ever released 5 years later.
Yeah, I want to catch up with you about what you've been up to in the last 5 years. And of course, I want to talk about this new release, Cheaper Than Therapy, and the release party that you have scheduled. I want to ask you about the theme of the record. You're releasing this during Mental Health Awareness Month. And there's a tie in there, correct? Tell me
Yes.
what that is.
So for me, music has been my outlet for my mental health. And I have a background of my mom is a therapist and my dad does music. He's a singer-songwriter. So music has always been my therapy and my journal. So for my mental health, I've written songs and released them. And with my last biggest song, What I Choose, I had so many people reach out of how it's impacted their lives and their mental health and what they were going through. So I thought tying in positive messaging during Mental Health Awareness Month would make sense.
How has music helped you cope with these issues?
It's gotten me through a lot of dark periods in my life. I moved to LA when I was a fresh 21 years old, and I had never really been on my own. I went to college, but I went to college here in Indiana, so it wasn't too far. But going to LA by myself, I was away from all of my family, all of my friends, everything that I've ever known. And during that time, I don't want to quote my own song lyrics, but I had days where I was down and I had a hard time getting up in the morning or wanting to go out or wanting to just make it through the day. And songwriting was a thing that got me out of the house, was going to the studio at least once or twice a day and writing about what I was going through to get myself out of those dark pits, whether it be like adulting, being alone, relationships, all of those things.
And you said you're hearing from fans, supporters of your music who are using your songs as a therapeutic tool, right? What do you hear from them about that?
I get a lot of testimonies, especially with my biggest song, What I Choose, of different situations that people were in when they heard that song and how it's helped them. One lady specifically, her name is Jess, and like we've become internet friends. She was going through chemo, and at the time that I wrote that song, What I Choose, I had found out my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I'd say probably the next day after finding out my mom's diagnosis, I went to the studio and was just like, there's nothing I can do to control it. And then one of the lyrics is finding the good in the bad moments, even when it seems impossible, finding the strength to go on and push through every obstacle. And going back to Jess, she said she'd listened to that song every single day during her chemo, and she had a positive, high vibrational playlist, and she just would listen to a bunch of my music. And she is no longer battling with cancer. She is cancer-free, and so is my mom. And they both use those songs to get through that time. And other people going through financial hardships or homelessness or relationships and breakups have told me they've used those songs as well.
Is this influencing the way you write songs? Are you writing songs specifically to address these issues? Obviously, that's the theme of Cheaper Than Therapy. Did you set out to write an EP on this theme? Or did you just kind of notice that this was a thread that was kind of tying your work together?
I noticed that it was a thread just going through life. I would say my first project that I released back in 2022 was more about relationships and love, because that's what I was dealing with in life. And then once I was on my own and had to deal with real life problems, I'm like, wow, this is really tough. And throughout the EP, I didn't think I was making an EP. I just was writing songs that kind of tied sonically and also message-wise, and that created Cheaper Than Therapy. I've actually been working on it since the first song from the project was made back in 2021, and then the latest song was made in 2024. So just different threads of songs that I felt related and went together sonically.
What do you hope people take away from this EP, not just musically, but in relationship to the theme? What do you hope that this gives listeners in their lives?
I hope that it shows people that there's other outlets. Like if you can't afford therapy or you can't afford to talk to someone, that's really the theme of Cheaper Than Therapy, is that so many people don't have access to therapy or to resources to better their mental health. So you can use different outlets to express what you're going through. And also the lyrical theme of a lot of my songs is like, keep going, keep pushing. Like you will get through this. You will get to the light. You will get to the other side if you're battling depression or battling internal voices in your head. Like you will get through it. So keep going. That's the main message, is keep going. You got this.
I can hear elements of the theme in the lyrics of specific songs. Is there a song on the EP that for you really embodies and encompasses this theme?
I would say Silver Line is the song that really embodies that, because like the messaging is like finding light, that silver line, the hope that I can get through this one more time is like the chorus of that. And it's just like, hold on, like I'm waiting on my silver line. And that song I played on repeat when I was going through struggles and things throughout my life. And that song has really gotten me through like dark patches.
This is Taylor Hall with Silver Line.
I get down, don't really wanna show my face. Hard not to get stuck in the dark, waiting on my silver line. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Hold on, hold on, waiting on my silver line.
That was Taylor Hall with Silver Line off her new EP, Cheaper Than Therapy. Taylor will be hosting a release party for Cheaper Than Therapy on May 23rd at the Republic Art Space. Let's return to our conversation. I met you, it's been almost exactly 5 years ago. We recorded an interview here at the studio. At that time, you had just released your debut single, I Can't Breathe, and you had just helped to organize what is considered the largest protest for racial injustice in Indiana history, right?
That's wild.
A lot has changed in your life since then, and I want to discuss some of those changes. First of all, I believe you're a mother now, correct?
Yes.
Congratulations. Tell us
Thank you.
about that.
Motherhood has been, it's been something, all right? And it's been the biggest sacrifice I've made these last few months, and also like the biggest blessing that I've ever received. I found out I was pregnant around December of 2023 and decided to move back to Indiana and drive across all the states from California to Indiana to have my son here around family. The last song on my project I wrote before I moved, and that's the closing of the project, closing of that chapter, I would say, in LA, even though I'm not done with LA, of just like, okay, now I feel whole almost. I feel like that era is closed and I'm going into a new direction of my life. I don't know what that's going to sound like sonically or lyrically, but being a mother and going through postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, I haven't even written any songs about all of those feelings. And I have a new respect for every mom out there just sacrificing your life, your body, your day-to-day for your child is amazing. I have a new respect for my mom as well. But it's been a ride.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned you haven't written any songs about this process yet. How has this affected your music making? I could imagine you had to put some things on hold for a while to mother this child. Yeah.
Yeah, the craziest thing that I've told people is that my voice was gone throughout my pregnancy. Like during the middle of my pregnancy, my voice just went way down. It sounded like I was going through puberty. Like my voice would go up and down and up and down. Even just speaking, I sounded like someone going through puberty. And so I couldn't sing. I had shows and things lined up and I was like, I don't want to go on stage and my voice cracks. So that was really discouraging. And I didn't really want to write because as a songwriter, I'm trying to figure out like what notes and how I want to sing it. And if I don't have my full range, then it's really hard to write a new song about that. And even finishing this project, I was supposed to release this project some months ago and I wanted to go in and clean up some of the vocals, and with my voice being gone, I wasn't able to do that as well. But now as my hormones begin to level, I'm able to sing again. There's still like a few notes that I can't reach like to the fullest potential, but I can sing well enough to do a show and finish a project. But it is a sacrifice, but I'm happy that I did take that time to just focus fully on becoming a mother and pouring into my son, Elias.
I mentioned there have been a lot of changes in your life in the last few years. One of those changes has been your place of residence. You've been living in Los Angeles for a few years. Tell us about that.
Yes, I moved to LA back in 2020, right after I graduated from Ball State. And I'd say the second month of living there, I went to a writer's camp and I ended up meeting some of the best writers and producers and I met this one man named Trey Cams and another named Jean Marc, and they are responsible for pretty much the whole project when it comes to like lyrically, sonically. I had never used any songwriters because I pride myself on writing, but my co-writer Jean, he also is a music therapist and he works with students and teens around LA doing music therapy. So when I met him, it was just like kind of basically free therapy for me because we'd go to writing sessions at the studio and we'd make songs and he'd ask me like, so for the process of our sessions, like he'd ask me like, how have you been feeling? And that's how we would start our sessions to create. And while he's asking me how I'm doing, then the producer, Trey Cams, he would start making a beat and asking if we liked it. And from there, I'd journal like, okay, I'm having a lyrical theme of finding light and trying to get through this. And I'd write down all these like key words. And then once the beat was done, we'd start connecting those key words to make the songs and the lyrics. And that's another way of how Cheaper Than Therapy came about, is because it basically was my therapy sessions. But yeah, being able and being exposed to new songwriters and producers, I would say, has really advanced my music, my writing, everything. So I'm so grateful for that within LA, and also like meeting other artists, going to different events, having the opportunities to have my music placed like in different TV shows, films, doing acting, all of those things there has been amazing.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the growth of your music and the audience. You've really grown your audience substantially in the last few years. I know you've had a lot of success on Spotify. You mentioned film and television. I heard that one of your songs is going to be used in a biography of Mary J. Blige on the Lifetime channel. Is that right?
Yes, it is actually out.
It's
It's
out?
called Family Affair. It's on Lifetime. And one of my first songs that I wrote with a local producer, Brendan Barr, he goes by 24K Tracks, got placed in that. He helps manage me, and we've been working together since 2020, him doing almost everything across the board.
Tell me about building your audience. Is this sort of a slow process, or is it something that's kind of happened in bunches? Yeah, tell me about that.
I would say the process is like a roller coaster, because at the most random times you might gain 100 or 1,000 new fans, or you might be stagnant for a while or something. Like I would say with TikTok, it's made it a lot easier to grow a fan base versus Instagram. You're kind of just giving your content to people who already know you, and TikTok exposes it to new people. I was just posting consistently every day back in 2023, and I had probably 1,000 or around there followers, and probably was getting only like a couple hundred views. But I was like, I'm going to post my music and see what happens. And then after being consistent, the song What I Choose started like gaining some buzz, and I was like, okay, that has like 1,000 likes. And then over the next couple days, it went to like 2,000 and 10,000. And now it's at like 500,000 on TikTok for just one video. And then people started just making videos with the song, and like, okay, put it out. And that was probably the quickest turnaround I've ever had for a song, was like within the next 4 or 5 days, uploading it on DSPs and giving it to people because it went crazy online. And then I gained probably 10,000 followers on TikTok. And now that song gets tens of thousands of listens every week. Like that song just passed 1 million on Spotify, but that song from TikTok is still, people are listening to it every day, like hundreds of times a day, which is wild.
This is Taylor Hall with What I Choose.
Shedding layers of my whole self, stepping into this new version of this person I'm becoming. I'm growing out of the patterns we're born into. Time for me to start something that I choose. That I choose. That's what I choose.
That was Taylor Hall with What I Choose off her new EP, Cheaper Than Therapy. And Taylor is my guest this week. Let's return to our conversation. Taylor, you have developed a really distinct and unique sound and voice as an artist. You know, you are singing about difficult themes, but your music has a lot of energy and it does have a very positive feeling, even when you are singing about some of your struggles. What sorts of things have influenced the development of your sound and style as an artist? Are there particular performers or artists that you've kind of looked to as an inspiration? Is it people in your life, your family? Tell us about some of the things that have influenced this unique sound you've developed.
I would say a huge influence has been both of my parents. Both of my parents exposed me to an array of different genres as a kid. Like I was listening to Amy Winehouse, Joni Mitchell, Tracy Chapman, R&B, Indy, all Corinne Bailey Rae. Those are some of my favorite artists. And I'd say some of the songs I was listening to like an Amy Winehouse kind of vibe for this project to make it more upbeat. And then also Joni Mitchell with like the storytelling, but like kind of making it quirky and using the guitar. And then when I first started playing in songwriting, I played the guitar, so that has a huge influence as well. And then for sonic wise, when I'm writing, I'm like, okay, this is really heavy topics. So if I like make it really dark and sad, production wise, it's just going to be a very sad song. Versus if I'm saying very heavy lyrics and then using brighter production, drums, and all of these different little trinkets inside of the beat, it's like, okay, this is a sad thing, but it doesn't have to stay a sad thing, and it can make you feel positive while you're listening to this music.
It's interesting to hear some of your influences, Joni Mitchell, NDRE. I think this is a great thing about your work. I would have a hard time putting it into a category or coming up with a genre for it. As an artist, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That's a terrible thing, because when people are like, "Oh, what kind of music do you make?" I'm like, I don't know. It's kind of alternative pop. I wouldn't quite classify it as R&B. I wouldn't quite classify it as soul. There's elements of pop, R&B, and soul, but whenever I'm releasing a song and the question comes on DSPs, what genre? I'm like, I ask my team and I ask my co-writer, I'm like, what should I put this under? And they usually say, just do pop. That'll make it safe, because it's not quite R&B. It's not quite indie. It's just like in this coexisting space between genres. But I think we should get rid of genres anyways.
Yeah, I agree. Pop can be anything though, right?
Yeah.
I mentioned, Taylor, when I met you 5 years ago, you had just organized this massive rally. The Indy Star said it was the largest rally for racial justice in Indiana history. At that time, you were part of an activist group called Black Women in Charge. I know activism is part of your family legacy. I believe your grandfather was active in the civil rights movement. Is activism still part of your life?
Starting from, I'd say, like the beginning, my family has a long history of protesting both sides and doing nonprofit work. And my background is in the nonprofit work as well. Like a lot of my family either worked for different nonprofits, or like my mom is a therapist and she's worked for DCS and worked for foster organizations and currently works in the school system with kids. And then fast forward, in school I studied communications and helped found Black Women in Charge, which is a nonprofit that I helped start, and now I'm kind of hands off, but still kind of come in with one of my friends that still runs it and see if they need anything. When I moved to LA, I started working with a nonprofit called Team Rubicon, which is disaster relief, and I was balancing both working for a nonprofit and then also doing like music, acting, entertainment, and also doing community organizing as well out in LA with a group called Not Too Cool to Care. So I think there's a space that both of those things can exist, like organizing, bringing community together. With the group I was working with in LA, we would do free community events. And I think that is what we need more of. That's what I've seen with advocacy. It's, you can do the protesting and you can do the lobbying, legislating. I didn't really like the lobbying as much with like government officials. I think the biggest thing is bringing community together and doing like events that positively impact people. In LA, I did a lot of events for creatives, so like musicians and artists and actresses and all of these different people and all of these different like ranges from all around the world. And we'd bring people together and do like yoga or cookouts or just different free events. And I'd say that's what I do now as well. Since I've been back in Indiana, I've been working with a nonprofit, volunteering, not like full-time, Center of Wellness for Urban Women. And I've done different workshops on maternal health and reproductive health, female rights, with all of the things going on in Indiana, and also Inspire Music Collective. They're going to be a part of the show that I'm doing this upcoming Friday. But definitely, all that to say, a lot of community organizing that I'm still doing and a lot of nonprofit work. I just don't share as much as that because that's just kind of the thing I like to do.
Taylor, you're releasing Cheaper Than Therapy on May 23rd. You also have a really cool release show happening on that same day at the Republic Art Space on East 10th Street. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you want to tell us anything about this show?
Yes, I'm super excited because I haven't performed in over a year. I didn't perform all of last year with my hormones and pregnancy, all the things. And I haven't performed in Indiana since 2023. So I'm super excited to be back home performing in front of all of my friends and family. The show is going to be the full project plus some of fan favorites singles. And I'll be doing like a tiny desk type of intimate show where I'll be explaining and talking through the songs and what I was going through and how they came about, and also displaying some of the artwork from the cover and the full rollout, because I used a team of Indianapolis creatives to make this vision and get the messaging and the imagery cohesive. There'll be resources there as well. Cebu Center of Wellness for Urban Women will be there having a table. They do lots of community events weekly. They have walks for women. They give out resources, contraceptives, all of the things you can think of. They help you find therapists. They help you find life coaches. They actually got me a life coach through their programming. So excited to have those resources as well there.
The EP sounds amazing. Congratulations. It's a brilliant work. Any final thoughts you want to share before we go?
Take care of your mental health. It's okay. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to slow down.
Cheaper Than Therapy is out on May 23rd. Thank you so much, Taylor, for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kyle.
From her new EP, Cheaper Than Therapy, this is Taylor Hall with Moment.
Starting to look like a person that I used to know. Starting to feel like I'm saving on the way to home. Things are changing, time is fading, life keeps going, here's my moment. Things are changing, time is fading, life keeps going, here's my moment. Moment, here's my moment. Moment, here's my moment.
Cultural Manifesto will return after this short break. WFYI Podcasts, brought to you by Foster Success, supporting older foster youth through the Ensuring Foster Youth license plate. More information available at fostersuccess.org. I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. Up next, I'll speak with Jenny Boyts, the CEO of 45. If you're a music fan in central Indiana, you've likely been seeing the name 45 a lot over the last few years. 45 is a locally owned Indianapolis production company specializing in live music events, including Rock the Ruins at Holiday Park and the upcoming Broad Ripple Park concert series. 45 also owns and operates local music venues, including the Vogue and Turntable. And along with Gang Gang, 45 co-presented the I Made Rock and Roll Music Festival in 2024. Jenny Boyts rose to prominence in Indianapolis through her work with Indy Pride. She served as Indy Pride's board president for 4 years. Jenny told me that the relationship she built while building community with Indy Pride has informed her work with 45. Let's join my conversation with Jenny Boyts. Jenny, thank you for taking time to be here today.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Of course. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we're going to talk about your work promoting live music in Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
But first, I wanted to learn a bit more about your background. You're not originally from Indianapolis, correct?
Right, yeah. I'm actually born and raised in Fort Worth, Texas. So not a Hoosier by birth, but have lived here almost 15 years. And so this feels like home. I ended up here I played softball in college. So I got to play at IUPUI for a couple of years. And then Indy did what it does and gets you here and makes you stick around. So it's a brief stint away for grad school and then recently moved back. Recently is maybe a relative term, but 2021. And so even that felt like coming home. So much of my community and established kind of relationships were here. And so, this is home and has been home. And I love this city in the ways that lots of Hoosiers do.
You mentioned you were an athlete. You played softball.
Yeah.
I know you also have a degree in social work.
That's right.
And you've worked a lot in the nonprofit world.
Yeah.
What role did music have in your life prior to taking on this position with 45?
That's a great question. I think, I often, when I tell the kind of story of how I came to be in this role, maybe leave out some of the parts of how music kind of has shaped who I am. And so appreciate the question. I grew up in a house full of music. My dad's record collection is quite impressive. James Taylor or Tracy Chapman were always kind of playing in our house. And so that feels really formative for me. I have multiple musicians in my family, learned to play the guitar, taught myself, pretty early on, and then had an aunt that really nurtured that. And that felt really formative and also just a good connection point for me growing up, which was really important. But yeah, this career itself, building upon that, I think, foundation, just the love of music individually, I think really this role and this job in my career has really been kind of how does music bring people together, kind of build community and create connection. And yeah, it came kind of in the last 2 years. After kind of returning back to Indianapolis during COVID and wanting to kind of reroute myself, again, I had quite a bit of family and a community already, but wanting to kind of plug back in a meaningful way in the city, found myself joining the Indy Pride board and was asked to kind of take leadership as president, kind of coming out of COVID. And really what that meant was a lot of repair in a lot of ways, kind of just the ways in which historically that institution or organization has caused harm, and also to really elevate and honor so much of the ways in which that organization and that institution has elevated and attempted to create space for the queer community here in the city. And so that was, it allowed me to kind of merge a bit of my social work and community development background in my career with kind of this volunteer work and figuring out kind of what's the role of nonprofits, and specifically a powerful nonprofit like Indy Pride. I think we got to see, not only because of the need, but I hope it was because of the spaces we created, Indy Pride grow in those 3 years. I feel really proud about the largest one-day Pride Festival in the Midwest was last year for us. We had 37,000 people in 2024 at Military Park, and quite frankly, that's also how I kind of got the taste or the itch for when you're kind of standing backstage and able to see thousands of people with their hands raised to their favorite artist or just being together and joyful. And so yeah, I think it clicked for me then, like, oh, this can be both a mechanism and a tool to bring folks together and build community, but also is really powerful in the ways in which, music and live music can empower and amplify local music, the local music scene, but also be an economic catalyst for a lot of folks. And so got to know the guys who bought the Vogue in 2019. And then, they kind of sat down to coffee and said, here's all the things we were hoping to do with 45. And I kind of said, it's great. Who's going to lead it? Kind of creating a job description in my head. And at the end of the conversation, they had asked if I would take kind of the CEO role and said yes. So it's a bit of a hard right turn. But I think, what is true and what remains true is that, for me, my personal ethos is that people come first and relationships matter. And that's true whether you're running, a live music business or you're doing nonprofit work. And my hope is that people feel that and see that when they come to a 45 venue. You
came on with 45 as CEO in 2023. Is that right?
That's
Roundabout
right,
that? Yeah.
Sometimes I need a whiteboard, but that seems right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a complex organization.
That's right.
You own multiple venues, the Vogue,
Yes.
historic Indianapolis music venue, the Turntable,
Yeah.
a newly launched
Yeah.
Indianapolis music venue,
Yeah.
just kind of next door
That's
or
exactly right. Yeah.
into the Vogue.
Yeah.
You also operate the Rock the Ruins Music Festival at Holiday Park. Give us an overview of what 45 is. It's a live music production company. It's your promoters. What is 45?
Yeah, I mean, my hope is that, there's kind of the ways in which we technically can talk about what is 45, and we'll love to do that. I think at its core, what I hope is that we're also a partner here in the city, and so not only do we own and operate multiple venues on our own, the hope in partnerships like with I Made Rock and Roll and Gang Gang, or even Indy Pride, or we have worked really closely with Indy Sports Corp over the last couple of years, the 500 Festival. How are we actually being a meaningful partner to other institutions in the city, and not only just kind of lending our expertise as it relates to live music and event production, but also being a really, I hope, helpful thought partner. And how do we continue to elevate a guest experience, the residents experience that overall just, my goal is to make sure that 45 plays a little bit of part of making sure that the quality of life here in this city, meets, the worth of the folks that live here. So that's kind of our ethos, and ours. Partnerships are at the center. I think, our strategic kind of tools that we use to do that are our venues and our stages. And so you mentioned a couple, but when these guys bought the Vogue, it was just the Vogue, and that was in 2019, which is a hell of a time to buy a live music venue. And so what COVID forced, and I think just quickly learning about the industry forced these guys to make a decision on, is like, well, where and how do we keep people employed, number one, and number two, when the time was right and safe, how do you bring people back together, right? And if that's what we believe that live music can do, then let's figure out a role that we can play in doing that. And so that's kind of how Rock the Ruins started, actually. Is the first year of Rock the Ruins was spray painted boxes that you couldn't leave your socially distanced kind of pod, and in the middle of Holiday Park's beautiful field. So, it's a bit out of a necessity, but I think what we saw is that not only is that venue beautiful, but that there's a really important relationship with Indy Parks and the ways that they want to kind of continue to use their public space. So, take that kind of approach around partnership and then kind of apply that a number of different places and venues that we've popped up. But really at our core, how are we building a portfolio of venues and stages that allow an artist to start their career at a 45 venue and perhaps even hit the peak of their career at a 45 venue? And you do that by having multiple venues of multiple sizes. And so, our partnerships allow us to, Holiday Park is a good example, to make sure that if you sell out the Vogue, at about 1,000 tickets, you're going to come back the next year and you can play at Rock the Ruins, and that's 2,500. And so how are we building the next stage for those artists? Because really, some of them want to be with independent promoters, and some of them, just want to stay, who they know and trust, when they're making their stop in the Midwest. So Turntable is our newest kind of passion project that we feel really proud about. Especially as it relates to kind of the proximity to the Vogue. You mentioned it's in the former Crackers Comedy Club. And we didn't have to do a whole lot of structural work. It had a stage, it was an event space. And we made quite a bit of changes, and some of it's just aesthetic. We built a much bigger stage for a full band. That venue can seat around 200, and general admission can get about 400. And the idea of Turntable is that it still feels a little gritty. It feels a little like your, grandma's basement with her vinyl records, and there's a beautiful vinyl record wall, and the space sounds amazing and great. So artists want to play it. Guests are being really responsive to the space. So yeah, I think 45, as we're growing kind of our portfolio of venues, some of that's going to include partnerships that allow us to bring artists through. But we really want to be able to kind of follow an artist throughout their career, to get to the big stadiums, because your favorite artist didn't start at the big stadiums. They started in these smaller rooms, and especially for those of us who are locally owned, that feels really important to maintain and sustain.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about how local music, Indiana music, is integrated into the work you're doing. And this seems like a good place to do it. You talked about building careers, growing with artists. I'm curious because you have your eyes on the bottom line as the CEO of 45. Yeah. Is adding local musicians to a bill with national artists, is that a good move money-wise? I mean, we see it happen quite a bit. I think when ticket sales are low, the idea is you throw a local performer on the bill and they're going to promote it to their audience. Whether or not that happens, I think is there's room to debate.
It's hard to quantify,
sure. But how does that affect the bottom line? Is it a plus for a promoter to bring in a local artist?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think it's hard to quantify. That's absolutely true. I think, going back to kind of our ethos, like, whether you sell 150 tickets or 152 tickets, there is still hopefully a foundation that people feel that this local ecosystem and this local artist community is valuable and has a space and a place and a home in some ways at our stages and our spaces. So we try really hard to not throw necessarily kind of those local artists on any of certainly not the low selling bills, but I would argue that our talent team does a really good job of saying, like, hey, this is a really similar genre. It's going to do really well. And what does it mean to bring some of our kind of local talent in that spotlight and meeting those artists and also being in front of those fans? And so it's not used as a tool during kind of as a deficit tool, but really as kind of like, hey, how do we actually amplify these artists for a show that's selling really well that may not have a support that tours with them? Yeah, I think we continue to center as best we can local artists, not only just from where there's a need, and maybe to absolutely boost a little bit of tickets, but also where there's a strength and a strong show, and how do we kind of use that to spotlight local artists. And then, I think Turntable has allowed us to really get creative, and certainly local DJ scene, quite frankly, has seen great success. People were really receptive to that. And I think in the local music scene, live musicians, I think, have been really excited about the space and hope they continue to be.
45 exists in a very competitive environment
Sure.
here in Indianapolis. I've mentioned several times this is a locally owned company.
Yeah.
You're competing against a huge player.
That's right.
Live Nation,
Live
a
Nation.
multinational corporation,
Global.
owns a lot of it owns a
global.
lot of real estate here
That's right.
in Indiana. The old Deer Creek Music
That's
Center,
right,
now
yeah.
Ruoff.
That's right.
Old National Center, Everwise Amphitheater
Yeah.
at White River State Park. They're involved in a lot of big shows here in Indianapolis.
That's right. Yeah.
How does an organization like 45 compete for a chunk of that entertainment pie with this enormous multinational global corporation?
Yeah, it's the question that could keep you up at night if you let it. I mean, I've spoken about kind of partnership generally, and something that we value and we take really seriously, and that's true even in this case. And so, what I would argue is kind of the healthy and friendly competition among local and folks in the city and the music scene. I think that's also true and can be applied to Live Nation. And they're a really strategic and important partner for us. We don't see ourselves as enemies, right? We see ourselves, and I fully believe that, especially in the music scene where this has been, folks have been doing and scrapping for this for decades, right? You think about how much blood, sweat, and literal tears have come into the music industry. It's a hard industry. And so in my belief, and part of my leadership style, at least at 45, is that, a rising tide kind of, lifts us all. And quite frankly, that even applies to Live Nation, even as they continue to grow and continue to find success globally. My feeling, and I've said this in multiple spaces, is not only do I believe the city deserves kind of multiple options and lots of shows and a full music calendar if you want it, but I also think it has the appetite for it, and there's a market to do it. And I think you see that not only in our indoor venues, but even our outdoor spaces and the ways people get excited about and are buying tickets. And my hope is that continues to exist for all of us. And when that changes or how that changes, then I think there's a different conversation to be had. But I'm going to continue to lead with the ways in which, treating each other well. And sure, we're going to fight and get a little scrappy on a show we each want to win, or where's it going to go? And you're going to win some and you're going to lose some. And at the end of the day, my belief is that, the respect in that fight is where we kind of stay close together. And ultimately, it's going to benefit the city in a way that I think is really meaningful.
I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking with Jenny Boyts, the CEO of 45. 45 is a locally owned Indianapolis production company specializing in live music events. Let's return to our conversation. Before we go today, I wanted to ask about a particular event 45 was involved in, a very ambitious concert held last year, the I Made Rock and Roll Festival.
Yeah.
Indianapolis has some folks say there's a curse on music festivals in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of attempts at creating large-scale music festivals fail here, whether that's Evermore, if anyone remembers that.
That's so real, yeah.
Warm Fest, which
Fest,
had a couple tries. Fountain Square Music Festival, which I wouldn't term it a failure, but it did cease to exist.
Yes. Yeah.
There are conflicting reports on how I Made Rock and Roll did. Tell me about the I Made Rock and Roll Festival and how did it go?
Happy to share it. Yeah, I think our measure of success, and even the ways in which you just described is real for a lot of people, was, assumes that there's just a financial kind of success or a metric that we hit or we don't hit. First year festivals are hard, period. You just named a few that were not only first year, but year over year, it's still really hard. And so imagine that at a first year festival. It was a brand, it was an idea, and quite frankly, a concept that we feel really proud of. And that's not going away, which is what's the truth and how do we tell the truth about the genre of rock and roll and make sure that Black folks and Black artists who historically have been marginalized are getting the credit and the authorship that we know they deserve. So that that feels important. That has not changed. That was really the starting point for us as we thought about the partnership with Gang Gang. Yeah, I mean, our measures and metrics of success absolutely were rooted in some financial measures. And I think while we didn't sell as many tickets as we hoped, we survived and we've weathered that storm, both entities and organizations, in the ways that we needed to. And what I think kind of came through after it all shook out was not only is this a kind of the theme that we're both entities are really committed in, but that we're also willing to not just give up on that. And by giving up, it means, sometimes it does mean like, how do you expand differently? And how do you kind of pause and say, is it a one-day event? Or what I hope folks are seeing now, 2025, is that, actually it's spreading, right? So that I Made Rock and Roll is co-promoting quite a few shows across the Midwest and building a base and an audience in multiple places and multiple cities and not just here. A one-day festival, is just really tough and challenging to figure out. So can we try and take this year to try and learn something different? And absolutely that's being done. And yeah, I think the commitment that we have to Gang Gang is that it's coming back in 2026, and whether that is the same kind of lineup or we are really kind of amplifying and digging in to kind of what does it mean to either highlight local or regional artists or to tell kind of the story a different way, that's on the table. And so, yeah, I actually don't know that I would call it a failure as much as I would call, the idea that we did something we believed in really big. It was highly successful. Everybody was safe. It was an amazing lineup. If you were there, the show sounded amazing, and artists that we feel really proud of. And that, instead of continuing to repeat that same pattern, but let's pause and see how do we spread this and grow this in a way that doesn't just mean tickets sold one day. And that's what I hope people see and feel in the next year, 8 to 10 to 12 months. Yeah, and then certainly would return in 26 at American Legion Mall, with a stage and sounds that are going to be just as beautiful and hopefully as many people, if not much more, to join us in that journey.
I appreciate that. So the plan is, for the time being, to do another large-scale, day-long music fest, American Legion Mall, 2026.
We don't have a date. If that that's true.
Just clarifying.
But I think there is the strategic vision that we're aligned with on Gang Gang and the ways in which we can support as a production partner and a partner in the overall kind of vision of the campaign and the event. And the ways in which we don't want it to leave necessarily from American Legion Mall. And we're gonna cross every T and dot every I to make sure that we've figured that out before we make any definitive decisions about changing it at all. But yeah, there's excitement around making that a reality in 26.
That is exciting. Glad to see it continue.
Yeah.
Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah.
You have a lot going on this summer, a lot of events coming up.
Yeah.
Tell folks where they can keep track of all that. And is there one or two concerts you really think people should be paying attention to this summer?
It's a great question. We do. We're gearing up for, all of a sudden it's May. We've been indoors, and for our team, it means they're itching to get outside and building stages and turn speakers on. So excited about that. We have right now 7 shows at Holiday Park for Rock the Ruins. 6 of them are ticketed national touring bands. One of my favorites, St. Paul and the Broken Bones, is going to be at Holiday Park, so look out for that one. RockTheRuins.com is where you can find all Rock the Ruins specific information. And what I'm really proud about this year too is we added a free event, and that is with Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra. So historically, the symphony has played at Holiday Park, certainly pre-COVID, but even for decades, I think, before that. And so we were committed to the neighbors and the neighborhood to make sure that was not only just a free event, but one that was, hopefully meaningful and nostalgic for them would come back. So that is happening as well. And so I would say those 2 shows I'm really excited about at Holiday Park. The St. Paul and the Broken Bones, and then ISO is going to come out and do a free show for the neighborhood. And so I'm really excited about that for the city. But, the other really exciting thing is, again, I mentioned we're putting 3 shows this summer at Broad Ripple Park. And so not only is it a space that hopefully folks are familiar with going to a show once or twice, but again, hopefully it's one that they kind of see themselves and learn a lot from on is this a good spot for a permanent venue? And so excited to learn more on that. That lineup, there's 3 shows there. What I'm really excited about is Shaky Graves, and so that's July 20th. And the tickets are already on sale for all 3 of those shows. Hopefully folks get excited about the genre and the artists that are on that short lineup. But they can find that at 45.com. We have a Broad Ripple Park venue website there that'll give you all that information. Yeah, and then we're going to do another 360 shows indoors. All our entire calendar for every single one of our venues is at 45.com. All tickets are on sale there. Pay attention to all our socials for announces or any kind of show-specific info. But, we try to put as much out as we can, and hopefully people are getting responses when they have big questions or anything like that. But really excited about the outdoor stuff, excited about the new things we're doing. And eager to hear and see and get feedback from Broad Ripple Park specifically.
I appreciate you being here to share some information about 45. Any final thoughts you want to share before we go? No,
I appreciate you having us on. I think, 45 wants to continue to be in the conversation, wants to be, somebody who can kind of continue to shape the city, but most importantly, I think just wants to be a good partner and a good neighbor. And so how do we do that really is through conversation and brainstorming together. So this feels like a meaningful one, and appreciate you, Kyle, for having us on. But excited about what's to come.
Same here. Thank you so much, Jenny. Look forward to the future of you and 45.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for this week. Thank you to my guests, Taylor Hall and Jenny Boyts. If you appreciate the local news and music programming you hear on WFYI, please consider supporting this station now at WFYI.org/give. And check out the Cultural Manifesto podcast at WFYI.org or wherever you listen to podcasts. Cultural Manifesto is hosted and produced by me, Kyle Long. Thank you for listening. WFYI Podcasts, brought to you by Foster Success, supporting older foster youth through the Insuring Foster Youth license plate. More information available at fostersuccess.org.